You know what's funny? I dead ass was like, what are they saying? I'm not late. I'm right on time. But then I realized we were 15 minutes late. So that's probably why you're saying it. Anyway, what up? You guys ready to have a good time? Hey man, you guys ready to have a good time? All right. Welcome back to the Den of Nerds. I am Josh, and we have a great show for you today. News is kind of light out there, so I thought, you know what we could do today? I mean, it's kind of like what we've been thinking about in general, and that is the big franchises. I would say the heavy hitters, definitely within our space, but just in pop culture in general. I'm talking about Star Wars, I'm talking about DC, and I'm talking about Marvel. What comes next for these franchises? Which one of these cinematic universes is best positioned to maybe turn it around? Because frankly, all of them have had less than stellar years lately. And even though, you know, DC and what James Gunn is doing is its own new universe, it's still coming out of a history with DC within the past 10 years that's really rocky, right? So I thought today what we would do, and pardon me, I'm going to sneeze. I thought what we'd do today is go through what's coming up for these different franchises, and I can kind of give you my take as far as what do I think is going to happen with these different projects. Which one of these franchises is best positioned to come out on top? Is there going to be a clear winner? Are they all going to turn it around? We can get into that. So, yeah, that's what I want to do today. There is a little bit of Thunderbolts news that's actually very positive, so I actually want to start the show talking about that a bit, but then we'll get into some news. Rough stuff out there with DC. Like, I'm going to be honest. Rough stuff with DC. Matt Reeves' name taken off of Batman 2. Just weird stuff going on. So we'll address that. But Zaslav did just have a investor call similar to what Bob Iger had earlier this week. And he did speak on a couple of things, including DC, their 10-year plan, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll get into that as well. And you know, I'll try to be fair about what I think's going on. I'll try to talk about, you know, the potential positives, the negatives, you know, some of the traps that they could be in. And we do more or less know what their plan is generally for the next few years. So that's what we'll get into today. That's what we're going to talk about. As far as show notes are concerned, not too much going on, man. Feels kind of like a slower weekend. Of course, all eyes are on Thunderbolts going into its second weekend. What will the drop-off be? That's going to determine a lot. I think a lot of headlines are going to come out of the performance of Thunderbolts this weekend, regardless of what happens, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's right down the road. All eyes are on that. So that's certainly a big thing, and we'll have more data tomorrow. But again, we have some data today that I want to talk about that's actually pretty encouraging. On top of that, I went and saw Thunderbolts again. I saw the movie again yesterday, and I love this movie, dude. I love this movie. I think it's actually fantastic. It was even sharper than I first realized, and I had a great time. And I left the theater ultimately feeling like, even if this movie doesn't make all the money, even if this movie loses money, if Marvel decides, and it really does seem like they did, that this movie and this team and these actors, these are their people moving forward, I still think that's a good idea. Like, I think despite all the things that are going wrong, I think despite the obvious state of where the fandom is at, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is at, I think this is still the right move, given all the other options and what's going on. This movie could become somewhat of a cult classic in a sense, where people will trace back to this film with a lot of the characters that they're going to be following for a while. You know, we don't know for sure, but there's some strong indication that these characters, you know, like your John Walker, your Ghost, your Yelena, Bucky, these characters are going to be even in the Mutant Saga. And probably you're looking at your new Avengers cast even going into the next saga, which is interesting. So, yeah, we'll talk about that. But other than that, guys, Man, it's slow. There ain't shit going on. And then somebody's talking about the chairs. Yeah, I mean, I told you guys I didn't think that was real. You know, Brie Larson's thing is for a completely different project. So yeah, I don't think you're getting any chairs today. I think we would have got them by now if they were going to chair it up. So I don't think you're getting chairs today. No chairs today, baby. All right, let's get into it. And let's begin by speaking about Thunderbolts. So again, I went and saw the movie again yesterday. I was actually surprised at how many people were in there. Kind of wild, like an early showing in my small town. You know, the second week in on a Wednesday. Kind of shocked at how many people were in there. So check this out. And this isn't completely verified yet, so we'll have to find out. But apparently, the movie made 4.2 to 4.3 on Wednesday, which is a better Monday to Wednesday drop than even Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, on this note, I will point out that some people took issue with some of the reporting around the box office numbers with regards to Thunderbolts of this past weekend, because a lot of people are look, here's the thing. A lot of people are bringing up statistically how bad the drop is, how bad the behavior is, especially when you consider all the other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But a small detail that was kind of understated by a lot of folks, including myself, was that it technically was operating the same as Guardians 3, including the weaker soft Sunday, the soft Monday, and then the good Tuesday. Again, consumer behavior has changed so much in the past couple of years that in some ways it is a little unfair to compare what's happening now in this year of our Lord 2025 with a Marvel movie to something even 4 years ago. It's almost like a completely different world. So I bring that up to say that this data here, combined with the data before that sort of suggested that this was actually on pace with Guardians 3, this is good. This is really good. And if this hold continues and you get to the point where Thunderbolts in its second weekend will drop 50% or less, I mean, there's no way around it. That is a massive W. That would be huge for the movie. And I think it would really set its trajectory like away from Brave New World, which would be so nice. If they have headlines like that, if you could show me a chart where like one's going down and then the other's going up, and it's like, I think this will be potentially very good for Marvel, for the movie, and all of this stuff. And, you know, as we've talked about before, like some of you guys get a little upset or whatever when I bring up the news or I talk about what the narratives are out there, this, that, second, and the third, right? And people will often say or try to act like it doesn't matter, or like I always get this take from people. Why does it matter what the critics think, or why do the numbers matter? I just want to know if it's good. And yeah, that's just not true, man. The reality is, when I talk about a story like I am today, okay, I just want you to kind of like breathe this in, like just listen to what I'm saying to you. When I talk about a story like today, and it's literally that, hey, these numbers are actually looking pretty good. Dude, people are going to see this movie. This could be a thing here. It will excite certain people. It will get certain people to actually want to check it out more. People want to be a part of the winning thing. People want the social proof. Like, it's actually really fucking important. And a little bit of momentum can create an experience and a feeling amongst fans and a group of people that makes them want to be a part of it. You know, oftentimes when you hear about a show or a movie, you've heard about this thing, and it exists in a sort of context of, hey, this is a really good thing that people are talking about it. That's the only reason you even care about it. Okay? So I say all of this to say that, like, dude, you can't have the crushing second weekend and the redemption of this thing due to word of mouth if there's not a low start. It's all part of the narrative, and it's either a winning story, a losing story, or somewhere in between. It just is what it is. Right now, it looks like Thunderbolts is winning. And it looks like this thing is going to do something that is relatively rare within this genre and for this studio. That is the story now. That's a huge W. So look, it might be a little early to make this call completely here, but I still think it's fair to bring this up. And what I saw yesterday anecdotally was that a lot of people are still really enjoying this movie and they want to go see it and support it, and they're having a good time with it. And the data seems to support that is driving people to the movies, which is so different than what happened with Brave New World. With Brave New World, it was like the opposite. I mean, we were talking about huge drop-offs. We were talking about a massive weekend 2 drop-off. Like, it was tragic, right? So what's cool about this is if the second weekend pops, it bodes so incredibly well because the weekend 3 could pop. Again, I mean, think about Sinners. Like, we have this beautiful example with Sinners, right? Where Sinners comes out, it's phenomenal, and the word and the buzz is so good on it that it has a 6% drop-off. That's fucking crazy. Like, that's unheard of. And then that headline creates even more of a draw. So, like, the late adapters are like, oh, shit, I've heard this is really cool. There's a bunch of social proof around me. I now want to go see it. And it just kind of, like, it creates, like, a snowball effect. That's how the zeitgeist works. Like, that's what it is, right? So, look, Marvel, I went really hard on you guys on Monday. And, frankly, I still think a lot of what I talked about was valid. But I was very clear, and I was very careful to point out that weekend 2 could change the story and make a lot of what I'm talking about go away. And we don't know for sure. We're going to find out. It is the biggest story. It's what everybody's honing in on. It's what everybody is thinking about. And it's looking really good. If it actually has this weekend 2 performance, I think Marvel needs to, like, they should feel really good about that. Like, that is absolutely incredible. And again, it's just sort of a nice sign that they probably picked the right movie to hang their hat on. They probably picked the right cast, the right creative team, everything. This was probably a good call. And I kind of, at least, it sort of, to me, makes me understand a little bit more of, like, Bob Iger coming out and talking about Thunderbolts being the representation of Kevin's new, focus on quality. It kind of makes me understand the Wall Street Journal article hanging the hat on Thunderbolts. I mean, and we heard even before this movie came out that Marvel Studios was so pleased with it, right? I mean, I've made countless videos. We talk about that on streams a lot. Marvel Studios was really pleased with this film, and that's not the case with a lot of these other things they were building. So that kind of takes us into, like, the entire plan, right? Like, that kind of takes us into Marvel's plan. How will that work, and is this going to succeed? So we're talking about the future for these different franchises, Star Wars, Marvel, DC. I guess let's just begin with Marvel because we're already on this topic, okay? So let's talk about what's going on with Marvel. We discussed yesterday this sort of changing plan where the Disney Plus shows will have less priority. And really, Marvel is not looking at the Disney Plus shows as the main area that they want to tell their overall grand cinematic universe story. So a focus on films, kind of throwing the Disney Plus stuff to the wayside a bit. That's part of the plan. They obviously have Fantastic Four in July, which another sweet little detail when it comes to the Thunderbolts and that whole situation is the better this movie does, it bodes really well for Fantastic Four. It kind of like gives you this momentum, right? So that's positive. Fantastic Four was already tracking way better than Thunderbolts. I think it's a bigger brand, perhaps bigger stars in a lot of ways, just more name recognition. Fantastic Four, I think, will do pretty well. The San Diego Comic-Con this year, and really what I'm talking about is the marketing for Doomsday itself. I think that is a massive deal, and if handled correctly, will set the entire Marvel fandom on a path of expectations and payoffs going right into that film. I think we already have some signs of just how big that is and some of the built-in draw. And I mean, look, he's got the Russos back. They got the OG Avengers back. It's Avengers versus X-Men in a lot of ways. It's Doctor Doom. Like, I don't know how much more you could actually throw into a Marvel movie that would be like fan servicey, a big draw. It's really cool. So they had built like millions and millions of views of the chairs. We're not getting chairs today, but a couple of weeks ago or months ago when we had the chairs, the numbers that came out of that were ridiculous. And it's all predicated on Doomsday. All of the excitement, all the fun, all the rumors, the RDJ announcement last year, huge hit, successful marketing campaign thus far. If that continues this summer, I think it creates a really fun environment leading up to that movie, which should then obviously be a really big deal. Now, the only problems I see for Marvel, well, there's a couple of problems. I think, number one, it's the shows for the rest of the year. Now, strangely, we're not seeing a lot of marketing for Ironheart. I'm actually thinking that's intentional. And it sort of lines up with the philosophy that they have going forward. This was something that Jeff spoke to yesterday, where they're kind of like, yeah, that Disney Plus shit don't really matter. So, like, you can watch it or whatever, but like, it's not that big of a deal. And maybe that's okay, right? I'm kind of in a position where I'm not really going to watch it either way. So I'm kind of ignoring it. I wonder what this means for, other fans that are out there. Are there some fans that are interested? If they watch it and hate it, is that going to hurt their fan experience going forward? It's hard to say, but I would still say that the rest of the year of shows is technically a liability. Like, I don't know that it solves the fatigue problem. If it's low quality, you're going to get a lot of people clowning on it, creating an environment where Marvel's a joke again. So there's bad things that will come out of that. The question is, can the Doomsday hype overshadow all of that? And I think it definitely fucking can. I mean, again, maybe if it was Deadpool and Wolverine, we'd still be in trouble because, like, there's a lot of hype there, but you're just not sure how big they'll go. Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man, these movies. If it were one of those films, I might say this is actually going to be pretty close. Like this, you're going to have competing narratives, competing emotions within the fan base, and that's not something you want. But Doomsday is literally a movie designed to hedge against all of that. No stone unturned, no actor unpaid. This thing's fucking ridiculous. Like, it is to the gills packed. You know what I mean? So I guess I'm saying, for me personally, I feel like that hype will overshadow a lot of the shows. And even if there are slow periods of time, and even if the shows don't hit or don't connect that well, and we're like, yeah, whatever, I still don't think it overshadows what's going on with Doomsday. Because of the release date being in about a year, that would mean in about 6 months from now, we begin getting an actual trailer and marketing for Doomsday. So you can anchor, in some ways, your year for Marvel fans with a Doomsday trailer. Okay, now, that's not all, folks, because before Doomsday even comes out, I believe we will get Daredevil Born Again Season 2, which legitimately looks so much better than Season 1. Like, I don't even really want to talk about Season 1. I know there are people that like this season. I don't think Charlie Cox is one of them, by the way. I did not like this season. But as I said at the time, it actually ends in a way that has me interested for Season 2. So, like, as much as I don't like what happened, it ends in a way where I'm like, okay, I'm still in for Season 2. And let's be real, the set photos, the rumors, they're cooking. They're cooking with Season 2. So that's cool. On top of that, we're getting the Punisher special presentation. So before we even get to Doomsday, we're getting a double dose of Daredevil and Punisher. And that feels kind of nice. Okay? Then you get Doomsday. And it's hard to even imagine. If Doomsday does its job, we will be transported, teleported, instant transmissioned back to a place that we have not been in a long time. And that would be between Infinity War and Endgame. A lot of you know this because you were around then. This might have been the birth of your becoming a nerd, right? But because of the cliffhanger and how much we did not know about Endgame, it was almost like Infinity War was technically the greatest trailer of all time. It was like a 2.5-hour trailer that made it so you wouldn't just want to know what happened next, but you would fucking obsess over it for a year straight. That's what it was between Infinity War and Endgame. It was absolutely insane. And if Doomsday does its job correctly, we will be teleported back to that. And here's the real benefit. This is where the plan for Feige and Marvel actually come together. The beauty of this is we're also done with the bullshit. At least the bullshit Disney Plus shows for some time. The only other Disney Plus thing that's supposed to come out next year, I believe, is X-Men 97 Season 2. And I think that'll be dope as well. And frankly, even if it's not as good as Season 1 because Bo's not involved and they went in a different direction, and maybe Bo wouldn't like to hear this, by the way. Sorry, Bo. But I'm going to say, even if we go from like a 10 out of 10 to like an 8 out of 10 or even a 7 out of 10, I still will take animated X-Men over a lot of the bullshit that's been on Disney Plus for a while. So sure, there is a danger of them looking silly because I really do think Bo's season will be the best that it will ever be. I mean, does anybody else fucking doubt that, by the way? Wonder Man got canceled? No, Wonder Man's this year. Wonder Man's late this year, which I kind of just included in my conversation about the rest of the shows this year. I feel the same way about Wonder Man as I do Ironheart. Like, it's all not happening. It's all canceled for me. You know, that's how I feel. But I don't even think most of us expect season 2 to be as good. Season 1 was like truly rarefied air. That was crazy. That was truly incredible. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be, even if it's not as good, I don't even think that's going to be shocking. I don't think it's going to hurt them too bad. It'll be a bad look. There'll be some bad headlines. But again, we'll be in the era between Avengers movies, so that should be much better. Then we have Spider-Man 4. Now, I do think Spider-Man 4 is kind of a question mark because there's just a lot we don't know. But there's two sort of ideas competing here. One is, how do we sort of continue the story of Peter Parker? And then the other idea is, how do we tell the story of the Multiverse Saga and what's going on with Doctor Doom and Doomsday and all that? So, you know, a lot of rumors with how they're going to fit all of that together. Ultimately, the hope is that it becomes not just a good movie, but an important movie for the Multiverse Saga, and really does set up those characters for an even more exciting run in Secret Wars. That's kind of what I'm hoping happens. So that's your next year, okay? And if all of that goes well, and there's even, like, there could potentially be more. I know there's a lot of rumors of different things in production, including like a World War Hulk movie. They're moving on X-Men and stuff pretty quickly. You know, there's still technically Thor 5 rumors. There's technically Doctor Strange 3 rumors. There's a lot of rumors out there. But what we know for sure is next year is going to begin. Daredevil bringing in Punisher. Then you get Doomsday. Then you have Spider-Man 4. Then you have Secret Wars. But there's actually one more element to next year that is crucial to this whole thing. And it's going to be a big deal. And that's San Diego Comic-Con. The marketing around Secret Wars, and we'll have to see how secretive they are about their secret war, but the marketing around Secret Wars might be all-time great. And they have the opportunity to pull in all sorts of concepts, ideas, versions of characters, pure fun Marvel fandom service stuff. Yeah, I think that marketing has a chance to be really cool and really incredible. So that is what's going on with Marvel. And you know, it's funny because despite it kind of seeming pretty bad right now, and there's a lot of stuff going wrong, like, I think the Daredevil numbers are pretty embarrassing and shocking. They actually have a plan, and they actually have pieces pulled together because, you know, this Doomsday stuff, this Secret Wars stuff is like heavy on fan service, heavy on nostalgia. It's like perhaps spectacle over substance, right? And that will work in the short term. And then we will see, as they have sort of maybe recaptured the attention, how to then they execute on all the new stuff. So I continue to believe that the Mutant movie or the X-Men movie in 2027, that's really make or break. That's so important. You can see Marvel and Disney kind of signaling how important it is. Bob Iger talked about how Marvel is doing, or Kevin has a 10-year plan for the X-Men. We've also heard a lot of reports from insiders that the Russo brothers are going to be involved in the X-Men plan. So if they recapture attention with the Avengers movies, if they really do let the shows go and build primarily in the movies, and they properly set up the X-Men saga, do 2 to 3 movies a year with X-Men, with Thunderbolts, with the Fantastic Four, like that's your core group, I actually think that could work. And so I think Marvel's actually well positioned within the next couple of years. Now, I think the biggest problem or the biggest worrying thing is Doomsday. If Doomsday sucks, like if Doomsday feels like what our worst fears are that movie is, meaning there's no plan, there's no setup, and they're just going to smash the toys together and it's going to lack substance, and it might just be kind of eye-rolling, brain-numbing, like, you know what I mean? If it's all goobly glob, that's probably the worst. That's the thing that could kind of drag this whole plan down, you know? So make no mistake about it. I think Doomsday does big numbers. But whatever happens with Doomsday will decide whether Secret Wars does big numbers. Some people think Secret Wars is a guarantee. I feel like it all lies on Doomsday. I feel like if Doomsday fucks up, I think Secret Wars underperforms. Because you can't outmarket that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if people are like, that's the RDJ Doom thing? What? And then people are like, that's your like, you know what I mean? Like, that's going to be tough. So that's probably the most worrying aspect to the whole plan. But I do think they've hedged their bets a lot. And I think they also understand how important this whole project movie is. So, yeah, that's when it comes to Marvel. Let's move on to some of the other things. Let's talk about DC and then we'll talk Star Wars, okay? So, DC. David Zaslav was literally just doing an investor call, speaking to investors. And he actually talked about Lord of the Rings before he talked about DC, which is kind of interesting. The story with DC is a tricky one because unlike Disney, like, let me just kind of say it like this. Unlike Disney, who, if you look at their stock price right now, by the way, crazy. Like, they've had a lot. They just had an investor call earlier this week. The stock went up 10% that day. It's up over 100, and it was literally just 83 a couple of weeks ago. Back up over 100 for Disney. Disney, pretty big market cap still. And even though, yeah, I mean, the last 4 or 5 years are essentially kind of flat or even down for Disney investors, Disney still has a lot of assets. They are still very big, and they're having a very good week. Warner Brothers is not in that position. Go look at Warner Brothers stock. It's really bad, and it's been really bad. And they don't have a lot of the other things that Disney does have. Okay? So what that means is Superman and the failing of the DCU, unlike what's happened to Marvel over the past couple of years, where it's like it's been pretty bad, but they just ate it. Warner Brothers cannot. They cannot afford to. And the failure of Superman and the failure of the DCU could destroy that studio, literally. So they have very little wiggle room. Now, unfortunately, that creates a scenario where you have a lot of pressure A lot of voices, a lot of tinkering, and I think that's frankly probably what's going on with Superman right now. And you guys know the whole story on Superman. It had the test screening late last year, very divided audience on that test screening. A lot of changes mandated from Warner Brothers, including hiring in this new marketing guy to handle the marketing of Superman. A lot of concerns of tone, a lot of concerns of the types of content in the film, a lot that we don't know. And frankly, it's a bit weird that we don't have a second trailer. Now, the second trailer should drop any day. And if it has, here's what I will say. If it has a lot of dialogue, I think that would be a sign of confidence from Warner Brothers. And also, I'm going to be fascinated to see how the audience responds to that. If it doesn't have a lot of dialogue, then I'm convinced Warner Brothers is terrified and they're hiding this movie as much as possible. That's where I'm at with it, where at this point, you'd have to be silly to not acknowledge that something's going on. And really, depending on the content of this next trailer, I think it's going to be a huge determining factor of how this film does. Now, Superman's initial trailer launch was very big, very positive, and I think there's a lot of attention out there for Superman. But there's also a big divide in the fan base. There are a lot of people that don't like James Gunn. You have this whole active group of Snyder bots or whatever you want to call them. A lot of people that are just preying on his downfall. He has also stepped in it a bit with, a lot of the big, I don't know what you would call them, culture war focused channels. There's a lot of channels out there talking about big problems with the movie potentially. And so there's a lot of stuff working against Gunn, a lot of stuff working against Superman. I think it's also fair to say that Superman's a trickier character in the sense that there have been a few iterations of him that have become really popular with people. For the most part, Superman has never been as popular as Batman or Spider-Man. And there's sometimes a gap between a general audience and rooting for Clark Kent. It can be tough. And you've seen a lot of Superman stuff just not connect. So there's a lot of stuff working against them. But, Gunn is a very competent filmmaker. You have to give him credit for being able to pull this whole thing together. And his movies do have a lot of heart. So I think it's just the jury's really still out on how this will go. I would expect Superman to have a fairly big opening. It's really going to depend on that second trailer. But I think it's going to have a pretty big opening. The question is, does it get crushed in competition by maybe Fantastic Four? Do the dinosaur movie take a chunk out of it? That's a pretty competitive July. Is Superman going to be a hit or not, I guess, is the question. Now, for Warner Brothers, I would expect they just don't want it to be a bomb. If the movie performs even modestly at a 5, 6, 700 million total, I think that's probably good. I think if it doesn't make what Man of Steel made, which I think was 670, that's personally probably a big L for Gunn, and nobody will ever let him live that down. But that's his fault in a lot of ways. Warner Brothers doesn't care about that per se. They just want there to be a viable commercial opportunity to keep making these movies, right? Now, luckily for Gunn, he has chosen wisely with the next two projects. And I think the beginning slate for DC is very strong. Superman, of course, great movie. Looks really good. Obviously all the concerns I've stated, but very strong start with that character. The Supergirl movie looks fantastic, dude. It looks fantastic. The visual effects, the sets, the vibe. I love the actress. I like the creative people involved. I like the concept. There's an element from Gunn's retcon of the Kryptonians, which I think will actually add even more oomph to Kara, who's already a really cool character. I think Kara's going to be a big hit with people. I think she's going to be hot. I think she's going to act a little broken. I think she's going to have a temper. I think she's ultimately going to be good, but a little bit maybe reluctantly good. I think she's going to be badass. Yeah, I think he's made a really smart pick, and I think that this version of Supergirl will actually be very successful. The Lantern show looks really good. Now, I say that, but we haven't really seen too much from it, right? But what we have seen looks good and competent. The creators on that show are really good. I liked the stunt video that we saw, which got deleted by Warner Brothers. And like, that's another thing. Warner Brothers is so stupid with how they come after people using the copyright system. Like, they are literally apparently using the copyright system to hurt the Critical Drinkers reviews of The Last of Us. And it's like, dude, that is such a bad look. And you turn people against yourself. I think a great example of that is the stunt video. The stunt video is cool, but Warner Brothers itself decided it was a bridge too far, and they start copy striking people. It's crazy. That would have gone on to do millions of views on social media, and it would have been a very positive thing for the film. I think Gunn has done this a bit too in the way that he calls people out and interacts with people online. He has hurt a certain level of online discourse, which ultimately does serve the studio well. So, Warner Brothers is going to Warner Brothers for sure. And that's a concern. But frankly, the Lanterns are such an untapped, like, the Lanterns are so unique. I think they're truly something from DC that can stand apart from what Marvel is doing and have its own flavor, its own lore, its own, the visuals are so badass. The idea of constructs, holy shit! Like that is such a cool concept. So I think they have picked really great characters. I think they have really great creative teams, and I think if these things pop off, like, I guess what I would say is this: I think the best case scenario for the film is that Superman is like people just have a good feeling with it, and maybe you won't win everybody over. Maybe there's a few controversial things in it. Like, I don't like super shit. I don't want Superman to say I'm Superman, bitch. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, bro, what? But ultimately, I still think there's a lot I will enjoy. I still think there's a lot of heart, and DC at large could still develop, even if I don't love everything in it. So if Superman comes out and it has a nice opening and the reception is strong and people are feeling good about cape shit again, because, look, Thunderbolts just did the whole industry a big favor. You know what I mean? Like, this is it's yet to be determined how big of a win it is, but even just the uptick, the positive reception, fans going out to have a good time, that's actually going to help the summer movies as well. That's why Hollywood was so concerned when Thunderbolts was tracking low, right? So it's all kind of connected. If Superman comes out, has a good opening, has good word of mouth, has good audience scores, I could see the movie doing pretty well, even getting to $1 billion on the high end, maybe breaking through that. It would really depend. But again, I would say anything between 700 million and $1 billion up is like a win for them. They don't even need this thing to break the bank. They just need a solid win, and you need audiences, and you need a lot of audiences, potential audience people, to be like more accepting of DC as a brand, because that is a part of the problem. Like, it's dead ass to the point where we have people in our community that, like, I'll talk about like a DC thing, this, that, second, and third, and they're like, oh yeah, the bitch ass DC, like, I'm not about it. And like, that's what they have going on. So they have to overcome that. And I think they can. If those next two projects are really solid, which, like, dude, I think Supergirl is going to, I just have a feeling that's going to be a hit, and I have a feeling it could perform better than Superman, frankly. So we'll see, we'll see how that goes. I think Lanterns has a chance to be super solid. And if all of that is successful, then I think they continue further on that path, because here's what's going on. We just talked about the Clayface movie. James Gunn comes out and says the only reason I'm making Clayface is Mike Flanagan's script. We're going to get a page one rewrite, that it's no longer a Mike Flanagan thing. What I heard from some people is that this is all Game of Thrones, and everybody's just waiting to see what happens with Superman. And there are some people that think Superman is going to do very badly. And there's a lack of commitment to certain things that Gunn wants until they see how Superman does. And so it all really depends on Superman. And frankly, you know, Warner Brothers has already shown us that they could do a path forward where they could technically remove Gunn or remove a lot of his power and yet carry on with that DCU. I mean, we literally saw that with like Walter Hamada, Jeff Johns, James Gunn, that whole shuffle. It's all the DCU, but it's just like different people coming in, tweaking it and all that, right? So I think Warner Brothers is going to look at Superman and they're going to decide, okay, let's do what James wants, or maybe we don't do what James wants. I think that's literally up for debate. And then there's this added factor of Matt Reeves, DeLuca and Abdi. You know, a story just came out that Production Weekly just reported about Batman 2, and Matt Reeves' name is not on the production listing. So some people think, you know, because there's a lot of rumors of like Reeves perhaps dealing with some health issues or some personal issues. Is it possible that somebody else is going to take over for Matt Reeves on Batman? What does that mean for the DCU or the potential crossover with Robert Pattinson? There's like all of these questions. So DC they're in a completely different spot than Marvel. Marvel changed pop culture, bit off more than they can chew, got fucked by the pandemic, you know, maybe leaned into identity politics a little bit too much. Marvel fell off from being the biggest thing ever. Marvel's whole thing is like, how do we rebuild and get back a little bit to where we were? Warner Brothers and DC, that's not where they're at all. They want to be what Marvel once was, and frankly, they'd probably be happy to be what Marvel was during Phase 4 and 5. Just look at the box office, like literally. So Warner Brothers is in a completely different position where they want to launch a thing that then changes the entire perception of what the studio is, what the content and characters could be. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I think they're pretty well positioned. I think there's a lot that could happen as far as like maybe they go away from Gunn's vision, maybe Gunn gets less power. You know, they could even fire Gunn. Like they could literally fire Gunn and just plug some other stooge in and, you know, produce movies, or just put it back under Abdi or DeLuca. There's all sorts of stuff that could happen, right? But if Superman's very successful, Gunn probably gets a little bit more leeway, and he greenlights some more projects and does some more stuff, right? So they're well positioned, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. And technically, you know, we can acknowledge that Thunderbolts is getting a little bit of the shit from Phase 4 and 5 thrown at them. Like, it's not all Thunderbolts' fault that it's underperforming. It's like all the rest of Marvel. That is also true of Superman. Superman is also potentially the victim of shit that Gunn had nothing to do with. A lot of bad DC stuff, a lot of bad experience with fans in DC over the last 5 to 10 years. So we don't know. It's an untested idea. And I think that's probably why you're seeing Warner Brothers sit on their hands a bit, not really push too hard on stuff. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how all of that shakes out. I would say this. I think for where they are at, they are well positioned, but they have all sorts of problems, and they're sort of untested in as far as like how are they going to handle these problems, issues, and the execution of it. Marvel is, I think, better positioned in the short term simply because they're leaning on stuff that works, and they have like this massive amount of success before that they can tap back into, and DC does not. So Marvel a little bit better, well positioned in the short term. DC, though, well positioned for what they're trying, and if it launches well, I think DC's in a very good spot. Okay, so that is your Marvel, your DC. Let's talk about Star Wars. It's over. Forget about it. Let's get into Q&A. All right. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's talk about Star Wars a little bit Star Wars also finds themselves in a unique position, especially compared to these other studios. Star Wars, although come out the gate, $5 billion in 5 movies, that's good, but you also have to acknowledge 2 things. Number 1, downtrending. The trend went down. Every movie made less than the other, as far as the sequel trilogy. Number 2, you also have to acknowledge that Solo bombed so hard that Kathy stopped making movies period. So again, like there's good things within Star Wars. You have to acknowledge that Star Wars, when it came out, so big, so massive, and it obviously still holds a lot of that same weight and that same draw for people. Star Wars is still Star Wars. And in some ways, the Star Wars brand and the IP is operating better than DC and in Marvel in certain regards. But I think the main difference is the execution of the content and the status of the fan base, right? So I think Kathy, and this is where, like, I give Kathy a lot of shit, but like, I actually think she has uniquely fucked this up. Meaning, the number 1, you have a sort of built-in corporate thing, meaning the sequel trilogy, because it didn't go off in a way that felt like it was planned, and frankly all of what we know from the sequel trilogy was just as much of a narrative out there as the actual story they were trying to tell. We know that they fucked it all up. We know that Michael Arndt was going to work on the trilogy for years, and then they fire him, and Kasdan and JJ are literally working the script on the set of the movie, which, look, Marvel does that all the time, but they're not the same, They're not the same. And we know that the finished script for Force Awakens, which was done on the set of the movie, was then given to Rian Johnson, and Johnson wrote and shot his movie without seeing The Force Awakens. That's why, like, the dice are a big part of Last Jedi. They were in the original script for Force Awakens. JJ takes them out in the final cut, and Ryan's movie feels completely different. So you basically have these 2 guys having a conversation about what Star Wars is. The main characters suffer, the overall plot suffers, the overall canon suffers, the fan experience suffers, and all the while, Kathleen Kennedy and all of her ilk were telling everybody that complained that they were like a bigot or a racist or whatever. So it was like truly one of the worst. I think it's pretty terrible what has happened to Star Wars. And we're now years later, various different movies rumored to go into production, all of them canceled. Various movies that they announced. I remember May the 4th, like 3 or 4 years ago, they literally announced the Taika Waititi Star Wars movie and the Acolyte show by Leslie Headland. And that was like their super big thing. Acolyte was canceled. Taika Waititi's movie probably never happening. So, like, Star Wars has its own kind of unique flavor of how much of a mess they are. I think that they suffer from it all feeling like a corporate product rather than a driven story by a visionary. I think that they've offered up so many different versions of Star Wars in an attempt to tap into different markets that they've now diluted what it even means to be Star Wars. I think that they've earned a reputation for having multiple projects fall apart. And, so that's basically where Star Wars is at. Now, within the scope of that period, it's not like everything has failed flatly always. There have been some positive things and some good things. I think Ahsoka Season 2 is one of those. And I think that that is true of the numbers. If you look at Ahsoka's numbers, especially now, when we look back at how these other Star Wars shows have performed, and that's Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Andor, those shows are nowhere near the numbers that Ahsoka did. You've had some success. Obviously, I think Mando Season 2 was a big pop and huge for them. Mando Season 3 kind of falls off. But regardless, here's the deal with Star Wars. What are we looking at in the future? Well, I think the most important and telling piece of this is actually the retirement of Kathleen Kennedy. Now, one of the things that you probably noticed, and if I'm wrong about this, please, somebody point this out. But I do not think that Bob Iger made a lot of statements about Star Wars specifically during the investor call. He spoke a lot about Marvel. He spoke a lot about the film slate overall. But, you know, he had given a sort of explanation of Marvel losing focus and how that's changing and why that's so positive. That made a lot of headlines, made a lot of news. You don't get anything like that for Star Wars. And to me, that indicates that Bob really just wants that bitch out of there. And then once KK is gone, you will hear a lot more about Star Wars, Dave Filoni's plan, and like a new thing. I truly believe that. And I think Kathy is railing against that. I think she's using all the power that she has, which is a substantial amount, to get people in the trades, to get different leakers, to get all sorts of stuff out there that says that Kathy is going to be around forever and she's producing the future for this company. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, because obviously Kathy put the Sean Levy movie into production, and that's supposed to shoot by the end of the year. And you're getting the Jon Favreau, Mando, and Grogu movie. And then there's supposed to be a trilogy that Simon Kinberg is writing. To me, the future of Star Wars will be decided when Kathy leaves and if that Simon Kinberg trilogy is greenlit or not. And one of the things that kind of makes me nervous there is, like, Dave actually, I think, likes Simon Kinberg. They worked together before. Simon Kinberg, terrible, bad. And also, I think they're to just do some Kathy Kennedy stuff. So I really don't like it. I don't want that to happen. I would actually cancel that whole thing and go in a different direction. Now, regardless of that, Star Wars has something that is really good, a strong benefit to them, and that would be Dave Filoni. And I know there's some people that are like, whatever. They don't like Dave Filoni. The facts are, a lot of the fans love Dave, and a lot of the content that Dave has made has really resonated with people. The hardcore Star Wars people really like Dave Filoni, for the most part. Tales of the Underworld, by the way, actually performing quite well. It's doing pretty well for just a little 6-episode miniseries. Doing very well. Ahsoka Season 2, as I've talked to you guys about, you're not ready. You are not ready. They are going for it. Dave said this really cool thing at Celebration where he's talking about how one of the lessons George gave him was, don't wait to be great. Just go for it, and go for it now. And I think when you consider some of the rumors for Ahsoka Season 2, that's what he's doing. He's going for it. And I think Ahsoka Season 2 has the chance to be maybe the biggest Star Wars show, if not the biggest, one of the biggest, and do a lot of heavy lifting for the fandom. So I'm personally really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be great. And then Dave has a movie. I think they have some other shows. Him and John might do a couple of shows. And then Dave has a movie and a whole idea like that. So the future for Star Wars is pretty uncertain, right? Always in motion, the future is. And particularly with Star Wars, because it really feels like Kathy's just desperately trying to, like, hold on to that power, and she's trying to assert her vision for what the future is. It's hard to say, like, will that actually be what happens? Will that be what wins out? And I would say that even if it does, you'll still have Filoni stuff. So it's kind of weird. Like, you might get into a scenario where that is an offering of Star Wars, and Dave will have some influence on that as CCO and potentially co-president. But ultimately, it might still be in a direction that, like, if it were all up to him, he might not have done it. But I would imagine Dave is still going to do Dave stuff. And if not himself, find other creators that would want to tell stories within that kind of Dave Filoni, George Lucas style. And I think as long as that happens, it'll be positive. Now, an X factor here, something that I think will really, really be a huge impact to Star Wars, is this Sean Levy movie. And I know there are a lot of mixed feelings on like what a Sean Levy Star Wars movie could be, particularly if it's connected to Rey in some ways. But I think the Goss is a good get. I think Sean Levy is an incredible get. And I would not be shocked if he made a movie that was heartfelt, entertaining, spectacle, fun, and made a shit ton of money and got a lot of Star Wars fans excited. So I still see that as a potential outcome for this. And I guess my best case scenario would be Mando Grogu, better than we thought. Ahsoka Season 2, pretty fire. The Levy movie, really good. KK retires. Dave is co-president. And then we get a sort of new vision for the future of Star Wars. I don't really want it to be the Kinberg trilogy. I wish I would love it to be something else. But even if it was that, if it's happening under Dave, if Kathy's no longer involved, I'm a little bit more optimistic. So Star Wars has a viable path out. I think the biggest problem is Kathy, and she's on the way out, and that is positive. I'm going to be really interested to see how Bob Iger talks about Star Wars after Kathy is gone. That's going to be pretty telling and interesting. And I give out of all of them, I guess this is the way I would say it. I think Star Wars maybe has the most difficult task as far as getting back to where it once was. But I also kind of feel like Star Wars is the lowest risk franchise to truly fall off. In some ways, that's because it might not be able to get any worse than it is right now. But that's actually kind of a nice floor to be at, because despite everything that's happened, and, there's a new pope. Nice. Despite everything that's happened and despite all of the issues we all have with it, I mean, Revenge of the Sith made records, right? Star Wars Fortnite's doing really well. Like, if this is the lowest Star Wars will ever be, then maybe they're okay. So overall, guys, those are my thoughts on where these franchises are at, what comes next for them, what are the pitfalls, the potential pain points, what are the challenges, what are the benefits, what are their plans, and how will it shake out. I would give them all a pretty good chance. I think Marvel's probably the best positioned. I think DC has a great chance. I think Star Wars has the biggest uphill battle, but also will not destroy an entire studio if their first movie bombs, right? Like, DC has maybe the lowest to go. Marvel and Star Wars have kind of bottomed out. Marvel's going to decide whether or not it's just kind of mid for the next 5 years, or if they can recapture the zeitgeist. And I think Star Wars needs to just get out of the weeds, and the Levy movie could be a big part of that. So that's my overall thoughts on all of that. And I'll open up to Q&A now. You know, kind of a little bit more of a casual show today. Just kind of want to get up here and yap about where we're at with this stuff. So, of course, let me know if you have any comments, questions, concerns. Which one, by the way, let's go to the polls on this. This is kind of an interesting thought experiment. Let's end this poll. Which franchise will do the best in the next 3 years? And we'll go Marvel, Star Wars, and DC. Boom. There you go. Not enough Warhammer talk today? Oh, I agree. That's the only problem. That's the only problem with today's stream, man. Nope, not enough Warhammer. 100% agree. Yeah. Okay. Oh, here we go. Joshua Campbell says Josh's LeBron take last night was 100% dead on. Oh my God. Why do we have to go back to that? Shalome Leaner with a 5 spot says just watched Thunderbolts and a person in the theater cheered when Taskmaster died. It was one of my favorite moments in the movie. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Dude, that movie's really good. It's really sharp. I laughed just as much. I got emotional. I felt like cheering. Really good movie, dude. Really good. Chris Listenfeld says, thanks for the W stream last night, Josh. Your discussion about processing was very helpful and something I definitely need to work on myself. Always appreciate the love and support from this community. Hell yeah, brother. No, I'm glad that you liked it. I thought it was a good stream, too. Sometimes we sort of dip into more mature or, like, I guess, serious topics or whatever. It's called the Den of Nerds. Frankly, this is not the den of life advice. But at the same time, I think, we've been together so long, some of us, that it's not so crazy that real life stuff comes up and then we just kind of give our takes and whatnot. So, yeah, all good, man. I had a great time last night, too. It was a good stream. Rossi, thank you for the cake. Appreciate you. Moose says, time for the Den of Warhammer. Let's fucking go. Yeah, I mean, I've got some, I'm going to be making some Warhammer content today for sure. Look, I probably shouldn't say this, but I almost skipped the stream, Let's be honest, guys. It's a really sun news day. I almost just skipped the stream and made Warhammer content all day, But I thought if I did that, everybody would get real mad. So I decided not to. Photo by Michael says, it was my B-Day on the 6th. Show me some love. Happy birthday, brother. A little belated, man. 57 months? Oh, my God. You've been him forever. You've always been him, Mr. Tomlin. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you, and happy birthday to you. Did you have fun? Yeah. Anders says, no new chairs today. So what are your remaining Doomsday cast predictions, and when do you think the next cast announcement will be? Oh, my goodness. I think Jeff Snyder's list is pretty close. I think some of the people that he said are not in the movie are in the movie. Yeah, I mean, look, I think in some ways we've known who's going to be in the movie for years. It's like that 60 or 70 characters. It's basically all the characters. At least that's what I think. And I tried to warn you guys about that chair stuff, man. Like, you guys follow these accounts on Twitter that literally don't know any goddamn thing. And when that was popping off, like, I tweeted about it. I was like, I don't think this was real. I talked about it on Discord. I talked about it in the streams. And a lot of people were like, no, it's got to be real because Brie Larson posted something. Like, come on, guys. Come on. Just come on, would you? Darth Dan, welcome back to the Nerd Vengers, baby. You are a Nerd Venger now. Appreciate you. Anders follows up and says, who do you think gets recast after Secret Wars, and what will their role be in the MCU? Iron Man, Hulk, Cap. Will this happen immediately, or will they randomly pop back up over the years? I actually don't think you're going to get a new Steve Rogers. You might get a new Tony Stark. But I actually don't think there's going to be a lot of recasting. I think it's more that the X-Men are now in the MCU. Like, that's what I think is going on. Yeah, because, well, we'll just have to see, but it would be hard for them to just, like, because they're setting up the Thunderbolts. This Thunderbolts team is your new Avengers. Like, not just, for the corny marketing. Like, literally, that's your new Avengers. So, yeah, I don't know that you're going to get Steve Rogers. You're going to get a lot of Steve in the next two Avengers films, but I don't think you just go back to Steve after that. Does that make sense? Joshua says, what you said about AIW makes me think Spider-Man 4 should be a prequel. Oh, I mean, sure, maybe. It could work that way. I don't love that idea. But yeah, it absolutely could be. So hard to limit to 50 letters, but can only do $2. Dude, you're okay. You could also just put your statement in the chat too, right? At the end of it, I'd probably get to it. Warhammer Heresy says, gives me a member. Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you, bro. I got to play those Crimson Fists soon, man. The new white peach Red Bull is fire, says Joshua. That actually sounds pretty good, but I actually like the Red Bull flavor. I don't drink a lot of it, but I actually like that flavor. Like that bubblegum pure sugar flavor. I like it. Shub says, KK going away will fix a lot of problems. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, potentially. Yeah. John Cross says, bro, I literally said on Monday, it doesn't matter if Thunderbolts makes money. What matters is if it's good. And you were like, meh, it's wrong. Yeah, well, you're always wrong. So that's probably why I said it. You know, it's probably just like a pattern recognition. Like I see John Cross and I'm just like, oh man, this motherfucker again. Like this dude's just wrong. But also that's not what I said. And if you recall, I even said on Monday that if weekend 2 is really good, it actually cancels out a lot of stuff I'm talking about. But at the time, especially considering Sunday's numbers and Monday's numbers, I was actually even more valid than I first thought about. I didn't even know that it was actually under the already bad projections. So I was even more right. It's just that, so this is how the world works, John Cross. You only know what you know at the time, and when new information comes, you change the story. That's how that shit works. My God. Joshua Campbell says, Star Wars should bring back everyone from prequel and make CW movie. Now you're just getting ridiculous. I can't believe you fit that in there with 50 characters. Fan Jackson says, not enough Warhammer talk today. I absolutely agree. 100% agree. Rossi says, I guess you could also call it the Den of Family. Yeah. Yeah, we could probably do that. Probably call it that. Weren't we just saying last night that you aren't a nerd venture until Josh yells at you? I mean, you guys said that. I didn't say that, and now I'm going to yell at you for saying it. Lou says, Bucky as Cap was badass in the comics. We need him. Yeah, he was pretty decent as Cap. I don't know. Maybe he'll become Cap. I kind of doubt it. To be honest. But I like his dynamic. I think it's cool. I really like, you know what I was thinking about too last night or yesterday afternoon when I was watching the movie? All of these characters are going to be freaked the fuck out by the old Avengers. I mean, think about how Yelena's dad will react to seeing Natasha again. Think about how Yelena would react to that. I mean, think about how Bucky, John Walker, think about how these characters would react to Steve Rogers coming back. Like, dude, that squad in particular is going to go through some shit. And I think that's good. Bianca, thank you so much for the gifted membership. Appreciate you. Anders says, do the Guardians of the Galaxy have a place in Doomsday? No. Seems a bit random from Jeff Scoop, and they only confirmed Star-Lord. Yeah, I think it's Star-Lord. I don't think the Guardians are involved. They could be, but I don't think so. Aaliyah says, Bree's big announcement today is for a party preparing cookbook. Oh, okay. The tease for that is what got everyone excited for nothing. Okay. All right. Van of the Black says, outlook of DC 5 years from now. Is it winning? I mean, dude, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to say. If I had to bet, though, I would say yes. I think they're winning in 5 years. Maybe without Gunn, though, you know? Hard to say. Vessel says, meh, you don't need to trigger Josh. Josh to nerd venge. Wait, what? That's very triggering, whatever you just said. One of the coworkers just asked me if the Thunderbolts is really the new Avengers team. Normies are definitely confused. Yeah, and I could see that. I think Doomsday will really solidify that, though. Sebastian Stan for Horus? No, I don't think so. Horus is maybe the most... if not the most important casting, one of the most important castings, for sure. Josh, I have a big Marvel W. My daughter asked to go see Thunderbolts with her friends. She's 13 and rarely ever watches Marvel. Can I say something real quick about this? Does Marvel realize, like, this is going to sound so fucked up to some people. Like, some people are going to get mad when I say this. I think women love Thunderbolts. My wife loves this movie more than I. In fact, she was a big push to see it again yesterday. And I've seen a ton of women on social media that are extra excited and like really happy to see this movie and want to do it. And you know what's ironic about that is that I think this is one of the best examples of Marvel not trying to like overdo that or be really cringy about like women or female issues and shit like that. Like, frankly, this movie rings tonally a little closer to like the females in Reacher than the females in She-Hulk. And I wonder if Marvel realizes that. In fact, there are some people like Daniel RPK and some of these others that are actually taking issue with how much they cut out of like Ghost Story, Taskmaster's story, some of these other things, when in reality, what you might be seeing is that normal women, I'm talking about normal women, might not respond well to all this goobly glob bullshit that you think Twitter wants. Like, you know what I mean? I'm going to leave that point there. But that's kind of something I'm seeing where I'm like, girls just want to have fun, man. Like, frankly, like, this is a fun movie. It has heart. It has emotion. Yelena shines for sure. And she's, like, strong in the sense that she is the lead. But, dude, she's broken, emotional. She says she sucks. She calls the other female a bitch. Like, it's kind of fucking real. Like, it feels a little more real. More, I guess the word is authentic. It feels more authentic than, like, She-Hulk. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Philip says with a 10 spot, Russo's could create something pretty great with Yelena and the emphasis on mental health and bringing Natasha back, only for it to be an evil version with Doom. Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot of groundwork there to have a really nice payoff and to have a full circle moment with Yelena where she truly steps out of the shadow, possibly by literally fighting Natasha. Kind of wild, right? What's the difference between the new Avengers and the Avengers in the comics? In the MCU, the OG Avengers seem like they would murk the new Avengers. The new Avengers is like traditionally a book that actually has to do with the Illuminati most of the time. Like Bendis's New Avengers run was really about the Illuminati. Hickman's New Avengers run is really about the Illuminati. But there are, of course, moments where there are a new Avengers team, and that's happened many different times. So, yeah, it's not actually the way it is in the movies in the comics. And the OG Avengers would murk the new Avengers? Yeah, probably. I think that's part of the point. Sentry, though, is really the X factor. If they could get Sentry to control his powers, I don't think the OGs stand a chance. Yeah. Lou says Sebastian Stan as Luke in the movies and TV saves Star Wars. I think it would be good. Apologies if my sense of humor is off-putting. No, you're fine. You're fine. That's not what was off-putting. It was off-putting to me. I was just thinking to myself, like, that's not really an explanation. Like, y'all just caught onto the Brie Larson thing and then believed some lies. Like, that's really what happened. A lot of the reputable people either didn't say shit or literally said it wasn't real. You know what I mean? So I was just thinking in my head, I was like, okay, so yeah, Brie Larson. And honestly, like, look, kudos to Brie because, I don't know, she got a lot of attention on her little cookbook or whatever, you know? Great take on the women. My mother hates the so-called woke stuff with women. She loved Thunderbolts due to it being normal and not feeling forced. Yeah, Darth Dan, I think there is, you know, it's potentially an uncomfortable reality, but I think that's probably true, man. And I wonder if I would hope that Marvel would understand that because, like, look, I don't want to live in a world where we chastise the female fans or it's like a fight or whatever. I think that's part of the problem with the She-Hulk content is it's so inflammatory that it's almost like pick a side, you know? And it's like, no, like, let's all just have fun together. And we all love Bucky. We all like Yelena. We all really like Yelena and her dad, right? So maybe there's a way that we could all just have fun and be entertained and like the comic book characters. Wouldn't that be crazy? Maybe we don't need it to be like, actually, Bruce, even though you try to kill yourself and you're the only Avenger to be confirmed to try to commit suicide, and even though you were abused as a child, watch your father kill your mother, even though I am your cousin and I know all of this, I've had it worse than you because I'm a woman, Bruce. Like, that is so different than what we have going on in Thunderbolts, right? So maybe just a little, maybe just a little less of She-Hulk energy, and a little more of Thunderbolts energy. Maybe we're going to be okay. You know? So we'll see. We'll see if they get it. But ultimately, like, I just want to support Thunderbolts. I think it's an incredible movie. I'm hoping it has a big second weekend. You know, you guys were so negative on Monday. And I tried to tell you, you know, you got to wait. We don't know. And the numbers are looking real good. So we'll talk about it on Monday after the weekend box office rolls in. And that'll be good. That'll be good. Yeah. Is there any other thoughts, questions, guys? Anything else? I'm going to get out of here relatively soon. Got some other work to do today. You know what? Before we get out here, I will say there's some crazy rumors out there about Magneto fighting Doom, Nightcrawler fighting Reed Richards. Very wild stuff. So I have a video coming out later today, probably within the next couple of hours, that's going to go over all that, the rumors, the craziness. X-Men stuff is popping off, man. Doomsday is kind of Avengers versus X-Men, low key, which is wild, and I still don't fully understand it. But the video that's going to drop later today, it gets into some juice, gets into some fun speculation. So look forward to that. And then we'll be back at it tomorrow, baby. And we'll either have some good news or I'll come up with a fun stream idea. I have a couple ideas I'm working on. So that's what we're going to do. Any other last thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, anything else before you get out of here? What else is on your mind? Who's the new pope? Who's the new pope? Did they announce it yet? Alan Ritchson for the new Cap? I mean, that dude is, that's a big dude. Danny DeVito is the new Pope? Oh, shit. That's crazy. Oh, shit. That's wild. Why does Josh love saying zeitgeist so much? I don't know if I love saying it. I mean, it's a pretty cool word. Yeah. I think it's just like, it's a good word because that idea, that concept, like the zeitgeist, the pop culture zeitgeist is a real thing. And as things like flow into it or out of it, it's really interesting to see like what makes the grade and what doesn't. You know, frankly, like if you would have told me that Minecraft would have been this big of a hit within the zeitgeist, I would have been like, nah. But to be honest, I didn't even see Barbie doing it either. So it's just funny to see how stuff catches on, right? Major Brick says, if Marvel makes most of its money from nerds, seems they prioritize normies. Well, you actually just solved the problem. They actually make most of their money from normies. It is probably the case that nerds spend more money each year on Marvel than a normie does. But it's just simple math. What do you think the ratio is of hardcore nerds to normies? What is it? 1 to 10? 2 to 10? 70-30? Let's say it's 70-30. So if the 30 buys, let's say, 10 pieces of merch a year, 10 a year for the 30, and the 70 buys 2, I mean, I think that would still be more for the nerds, wouldn't it? So that would be 10 times 30, 300, 140. So it's probably not quite to that degree, but it probably shakes out something similarly. I'd love to know the actual numbers, to be honest with you. And then there's to say a nerd and a normie, there's probably a spectrum there too, right? So there's probably versions of a normie that are going to do a little bit more than your average normie. This is kind of an interesting conversation, though. The logic goes from these studios, and I think this is particularly true of movies. The masses are the most important. You don't get to $1 billion movie without 4-quadrant mass appeal. And that means you're just hitting so many different kinds of people, and they're all going to see this thing. And it just can't be the case that group of people is all also the most hardcore into it, right? Yes, I don't know. This is interesting. I'd love to know how the studios think of that. How do shareholders think of that? How do board members think of that? How does that consumer behavior break down? I don't know. Kind of interesting. Bagel says with a 5-spot, 30 female fan here. I really related to Yelena in Thunderbolts. First FMCU character that is real and grounded. F by you mean female. Yeah, I think that's probably fair, man. I think that's part of what's going on. She's a good lead. She's a good character. I think she's written well for the film, and I think the characters around her feel organic and real too. It wasn't like this whole girls trip, we need to diminish the male characters to lift the female characters. It didn't feel like that. So it felt good. Felt good. Alex talking about Spider-Man 4 and Daredevil Season 2 tying together. Yeah, I think he means thematically they're going to tie together, meaning probably the outcome of Season 2 will have an effect on New York that then is felt in the movie. Similarly to how Red Hulk technically impacts Thunderbolts, even though it's just a throwaway line. The reality is the president having that moment and Sam being attached to that moment has changed the world and opened the door for what happens in Thunderbolts. So that's probably what he means. So, yeah. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to get on out of here. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the feedback, the questions, the comments. I thought it was a good Q&A section, as per usual over here with the community. So thank you guys for that. Big spoiler video with the X-Men and Avengers stuff dropping later tonight. And then we'll be back at it tomorrow as well. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video. Is everybody gone? Did everybody leave? Let's see here. Justin said LeBron def, not the GOAT. Bird would have crushed him. KK gotta get gone. 50 months without you yelling at me. Time to change that. Where's my army? But why would I yell at you when you have such great takes? And that's an opinion, you know, it's an opinion that people have. It's all good. It's all good, man. It's all good. Anyway, much love to you all, man. I'm feeling good. I hope you're feeling good too. Make sure you take care of yourself. Get some good foods in you, get some water, get some exercise, move the body around, and just live, man. While you can, just live. Do me a favor. On the way out, open up that third eye and wash out that stinky bottle. All right, see you.